Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Relationship Mastery Series, Principles to a Passionate Life and Relationship and Dynamite Families. I'm Alan Darbonne. I'll be your host for this series, and I've had a fun time gathering about 28 experts from all over the world, many different continents, and they're going to share with you their hearts and their experience and some wonderful tips and information you can use to be able to have those relationships and dynamite families that we all want and that we all deserve. And today I'm really very happy to have on the program Dr. Tracy Thomas. And remember to stay tuned toward the very end because Dr. Tracy has offered to give some free gifts to you. And so she'll explain those at the end of the program, and I'll tell you how to get to the link so you'll have access to that. But I'll tell you a little bit about Dr. Tracy to start with, sometimes called Dr. T. And she is the founder, and she calls herself the first client of the method. And she specializes in guiding people through their personal transformations. She's developed and practiced a unique methodology that centers on the basic premise that she has, that everything we are and everything we do is connected. She's known not only for the speed and sustainability of her treatment and therapeutic programs, but also her energy, her provocation, and also her humor, which is a very important part of this whole process. Dr. Tracy's background is somewhat diversified wonderfully. She has a PhD in psychology, and she has a Master of Arts in Organizational Development and a Bachelor of Arts in Business Management. She's had over 20 years of experience leading and coaching and consulting. And she's also developed Dr. Tracy's certified coaches. And she spends most of her time nowadays developing those kinds of things and developing specific products and content and equipping individuals to be able to have the kind of life and live with intuition and intention. When she's not traveling and speaking engagements and doing training programs, she spends a great deal of her time training for her next ballroom dancing championship in Marin County, California, where she lives. And we'll want to hear more about that. So I really want to welcome you, Dr. Tracy. I've been looking forward to the interview, and I'm so happy to have you on board. And again, welcome.
It's wonderful to be here, Alan. I'm really excited to have some fun today as we learn about how to do everything that you're trying to help people accomplish with the summit.
That's great. Well, let's jump in to start with, and maybe tell our viewing audience just how you got into this whole relationship field. That's kind of a fascinating story for all of us relationship workers.
Yeah, I think like most people, I grew up and felt a lot of confusion. I had a really loving family, but I felt confusion about how to be a person, and a lot of things didn't really make sense to me. But like a lot of people, you follow, what you learn from people around you, and you take that into your adulthood, and you see how it works, and you learn what works and what's not really serving you. And over time, as a young adult, I just, came to realize that I was experiencing a lot of stress and a lot of struggle in the relationship area, particularly romantic relationships and such. And even though I had a great crew of friends and that was all working for me, I felt like I didn't really understand how to accomplish one of the greatest thing that we can have, which is a wonderful partnership, collaborative partnership with somebody, and a great family system that way. So I actually went to different therapists and things like that, but I found that I was still not fully understanding it. So I really challenged myself to to learn all about this, not only as just a regular person, but to make it my life's work, because I felt like it was one of the greatest things that I could put myself, my whole purpose to.
Right.
So, so in doing so, one of the biggest steps that I took was in 2006, I decided that the greatest thing that I could do to learn about how to have great relationships was to create the greatest relationship with myself possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent a year dating myself and learning about myself at a level that nobody ever taught me to. And that really brought me into just the enthusiasm of what was possible from that, and how I could help others utilize that kind of focus and methodology to make their relationships everything that they want them to be.
I love that, dating myself. That's a great concept.
It was really a great adventure, and it's continued to this day, but it came from a commitment to say, well, I don't know if anyone around me really fully knows what they're doing in this category. So maybe I've just got to be that person to figure it out. And that's the fun of being human, right? Is this big exploration of how does this all work? And if we make that commitment to it, like people who are watching, this series, you can really grow and figure it out and have something very wonderful.
Right. Well, I want to hear some more about what you refer to as the method.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Tell us about that.
Got it. So, to continue a bit on what I was just sharing with you, there came a moment when I was, again, it was right before I decided to date myself. So I was probably about 35 years old, and I was living in Manhattan and had a series of relationships. I'd actually been married in my 20s, and then I had some committed relationships, and they weren't going how I wanted them to go. And at this one moment when a relationship was ending, and I had this revelation, and somebody had actually cheated on me. And, there was this moment of why is this happening? Why does this always happen? And it was this sense of sort of recognition that maybe I was contributing in some way. Maybe I was colluding unknowingly with what was happening in my relationships, even though I thought I was making all this great effort, really, really invested. And I looked at this moment and I thought, is there anywhere that I'm out of integrity and cheating in some way or lying? And, if somebody's doing that in my life toward me, I wonder if there's any way that I'm doing that so I can really understand what's going on. And when I looked at it at the time, I was essentially out of integrity because the work that I was doing was a very lucrative situation, but it did not feed my soul, and it was not true for me. And I thought, well, I'm out of integrity too. So I wonder what would happen if I lived my life is in every way aspirationally that I could to be everything that I say that I want from other people. And I wonder what would happen if I brought that forth in everything, and what would come back toward me, right? What would be the type of thing that would come back toward me in reciprocation?
Right.
And it was the first thing that ever truly made sense, that if I was doing things, even if it wasn't, somebody's cheating on me sexually, but it doesn't have to be like exact.
Right.
But if I'm out of integrity with myself, then I realized that this was essentially a methodology, and I developed it over time by trying it out. And everywhere I got in integrity in my life. So if a girlfriend asked me to brunch and I wanted to go in some ways, but I really didn't feel it was the best use of my time that day, or something else was instead of doing things that were just out of obligation or, the way that we can operate, I decided to absolutely do everything I could from my intuitive level that said yes or no. And as I stepped throughout that year of dating myself, into integrity on every level that I could, even though some people didn't like it, right? They wanted me to go to the party or whatever. It changed everything about the way in which everybody that came into my life or was in my life was relating to me. And in fact, I didn't have to do much about getting them to be different toward me, you know, like a boyfriend or something. It was all about what I brought forth, and that I have control over. So the methodology that I call the method, because that's what it is, that's really what it has been such a game changer that's what I'm excited for everybody to know, that any issue they might be experiencing in their relationship or in their family dynamics, that they can really have a lot of power from this sense of, what can I look at with myself? And if my child was doing something and I was trying to like get that to change, I encourage people to look, what am I doing? What am I modeling, right? And it doesn't have to be exact. It doesn't, but it's like, what am I modeling? Am I modeling stress? Am I modeling something? And because people just pick up on everything that we are. And so the method is a really exciting thing, because we have so much power and grace through our own selves as the methodology to things.
Right. That's wonderful. And I was just thinking how, what you're talking about, it's like any place that we're out of integrity, we have a blind spot. And not only is it a blind spot for us, but because we're not showing up in that spot, that's what other people are seeing.
Exactly.
So we're a blind spot for them. And so they're going to project into those holes.
Exactly. And that's our cue, right? If I'm getting that, then that's my cue to say, it's because it's a really humbling thing at first, but to say, can I find that? If I'm getting feedback of some sort and it might trigger you, or, in our romantic relationships are such our greatest curriculum for growth. If I can find like, oh, I'm asking my husband to do something, but let me notice where I'm not even doing that myself, and I'm wanting him, I'm like outsourcing it to get him. Or sometimes people do that with their kids. They're wanting their kids to behave in a way that they're not actually behaving or growing in or aspiring to. So it's really kind of entertaining also,
Yeah, and it's amazing because that part of the process becomes so obvious to others, and we're totally blind.
But that's where we can have fun with it, because when we experience something, if we can sort of say, how is this connected, right? How is it, if somebody's struggling, your teenager's having certain struggles or anything like that, if you can really see like, right, how am I taking care of myself? Am I doing, if I said I was going to eat organic and then I went off of it 2 days later, what am I modeling in a way that might send a more of a philosophical message or a concept? And it may play out differently with other people in your family, but the concept of like saying you're going to do something for yourself that is good for you, and then you don't do it, or you'll see that mirrored back to you, so you can know, oh, I just have more opportunity to get more connected and more in integrity with myself.
Right. So it's not the exact behavior. It's more something deeper about the process. What's the process that's involved? Yeah.
Exactly. And in that way, because I think our greatest struggles can be like, I'm trying to get somebody to do something so that I can feel a certain way and feel connected to them. And when we are the methodology and it comes through us, and we say, well, if for example, if I really want to be connected to my father, which is a relationship I've really worked on my whole life to try to be closer to him, how can I be first closer to myself so I even know what that's like? And then how can I show up in that rather than try to get somebody to be a certain way? Why don't I be, as safe as a person I can be so that somebody can be connected to me? But if I'm trying to get somebody to do something, I'm already in some ways acting like a threat to them,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And so we can all struggle in that. We've all had these arguments and challenges, and this has a softer, more dignified, graceful way of being in it. So then we can feel a lot better about ourselves, because otherwise we think we're failures at some things, and it's not
Mhm.
true.
Yeah. Yeah. And that'll definitely progress. And yeah, I can feel that in what you're saying, and what we were pointing to earlier is that this is where the sense of humor comes in. Rather than beating ourselves up, it's like, wow, look at me. Look at what I just did.
It's so entertaining when it's like, oh, have I done that before? Oh, sure. Of course I might have some of that come into my life. I've done that, and it's not even judging oneself. It's saying, of course, I'm human. I didn't even notice I was doing something like that in my life. But now that I see it in somebody else, I can say, oh, I do that over in this little territory. So I can understand, and I can have empathy also for how the person's in that process. And then we actually have more to connect on, whether it be our partner or our family members, our children. And we can know each other better through knowing ourselves that way, in this fun, amusing way.
Right, right. And an interesting thing, which parents are are very reluctant to do, but is a very powerful thing. If you ever have questions about, well, how am I not showing up in integrity? Ask your teenager.
They are picking up on everything. And part of this methodology, as I wrote a book about it that's coming out soon, one of my most important parts that I felt I had to mention was this concept of how, how we grow up and nobody really says, okay, you've got mom, you've got dad, your brother, your friends. Nobody says, you have a relationship with you, and you really want to get to know Johnny or Jenny, or you over, and like a conversation. This is what I would really encourage, and what I do in my work with clients, families, is if there can be a new type of dialogue and concept in the family about, in my relationship with myself, here's how I think, or, oh, this is happening to you. Let's look at how your relationship with yourself impacts that, and impacts what you're, like that kind of dialogue is, it may sound very new age, but I think if people grew up having a relationship with themselves that was very curious and interested and connected that way, one could really have a lot less pain and struggle in the very area that we hold the most dear, is our relationships to people and feeling loved. And which is where I think in the world people are in the most pain, trying to feel love and connection. And this makes a difference in that the parents' relationship with themselves is their greatest asset that they can ever live, because as you said, the kids are picking up on it anyway. And they're picking up on how you treat yourself way more than anything you ever say to them. And
for sure,
my belief is that your greatest impact is what you say is way down here, even though we tend to remember these things. We end up acting out things about our parents that we didn't like. And we all say, how am I doing this? Because we absorbed their relationship with themselves. And our children will absorb our relationship with ourselves. And they will maybe act that out until that doesn't work very well, and they have to change.
Right. Right.
So I just love the power of how families can how you can have a passionate life and a dynamic family, and all the unpassionate relationships come from how you treat yourself, how you are in that can just really impact everything and make that effort so much less. And it's a way of holding you accountable too. So
right.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I wonder, I'm very touched by how you offer this, and you're offering it in a way that really is quite simple enough to understand, but it's profound. In
Thank
fact,
you for
it's
saying
all
that.
around you. So
Thank you for saying that, because sometimes, Alan, I mean, my clients know this, but it's so enjoyable to have this connection with yourself and to know that you have essentially a paradigm, a model, a method. You have a concept that I believe was inborn, right? We were given our own selves and the ability to witness ourselves, but we were not taught to witness ourselves growing up. So we were given that relationship. So we're never alone because we're always with ourselves if we will notice. And the simplicity of that, I feel like that made so much sense to me, because it never made sense that a creator would like create us with such an inability to figure out the very, most important thing of how to be loving, how to be in a loving, connected relationship with humanity, with our
right,
community.
right.
So something like this, it's like, oh, they made it. It was we were made with this built in, and we just weren't aware of it yet. So when we become aware of it, it is truly simple but mind-blowingly profound when you start to experience it. You just
Right.
have to, you're just amused all the time and very satisfied, because you just see this like way that things work, and they're working for you. And it's really, really, really enjoyable. And I'm glad that you can see that it's not challenging, but it just takes a shift toward oneself, and a commitment to that, to really be in the best relationship with yourself, because that relationship will be the quality of every relationship around you. Nothing can be greater than your relationship with yourself is. That sets the bar.
Right, right. Yeah, it's often said, you got to love yourself, but
Right.
no one says, well, how do you do that?
This is what I thought.
But what is it that is an indication that you're not? And I mean, even that shift from looking at yourself with love from your heart, from your spirit, rather than judging yourself, and that, where that place takes you, that's a very ugly road. uh, so that's a wonderful part of it too. And what a shift! Talking about shifts, it's the shift from the powerlessness
Everything.
that so many individuals and couples and so many parents feel powerless. But
Yeah,
this
and I
is
know it. I know it. That's why I feel like you do about, this important purpose, because there's things that we can't control, right, in our universe, things that are happening, and our job is to work with that and evolve. But this is something we've felt out of control of our own selves and our destiny with that for so long as a collective. So having this sense of this shift with yourself, it makes it so that things make sense, and that this, whatever happens in life, whatever happens in your relationships, if you have you and you are really connected to the fullness of that, because there's a lot there, and it's really, really interesting and cool. I say to myself, no matter what happens, I'm going to be there for you, Tracy. If you're, 97 years old and you're sitting, in a old folks home, or however, I'm committed to do everything I can to be kind and think the most loving thoughts and the most productive thoughts. And I'm really committed to myself, which makes a sense of security where other things we can't predict. We can come to a place where we can truly predict the concept that we will do what we feel is in our best interest at that moment, whether it's what we eat, what we say, what we think, what we do. So that just builds such a sense of peace within oneself. And then you're not sending a lot of fear-based stuff out into your environment, because you have more peace about the moment and the future.
right, right. Yeah. It's something along those lines. My wife and I both have a photograph of ourselves as infants that we keep in a central place in the house. And something very powerful that I will do at times is I'll just look into the eyes of myself as an infant and say, what can I do for you today?
Lovely.
And it's it's powerful because it's exactly that. It's that same connection with the infant as however old I get to be,
Right.
uh, knowing that I am there for me. And it'll be
Because
wonderful to
that
share that. But
well, you're saying that your core self was there from the beginning. And what I love about a relationship with yourself and the power of this methodology is all along, even though maybe we didn't know we had one, right? Because most people, I find, until I talk to them about this, they didn't even know they had a relationship with themselves. So to even assess their relationship with themselves. But when I really look back, and if everyone will think about this, you had a navigation system that was telling you, go grab these keys as a baby, or this toy, or go to this person, but not this person. Go to, in elementary school, you notice this person and you walk over to them. All these things about you, and it's in everything. You have a really core navigation system that knows what is really best for you, but it's got so many messages around it that say, this is how to be a person. But your roadmap for being a person comes from that navigation system that says something like, it might say to me, I'll use this example again, it might say, I'd really want to help my friend move, but what is best for me this weekend or something is resting and not doing any activity. Like that kind of awareness that says, I really want to do that, but I really need to do this for myself because that's what I feel really intuitively. Even though it's scary to act on our navigation system, it will never steer you wrong for your own good. Now, it may have other people say things that, they don't understand why you're doing things differently. But if you can let go of that and know that you have something telling you, like it always did, it might have said, that's not the right person to date, but then you did it anyway. Really want everybody to think about trusting that part of the self. It's not fear-based, it's actually love-based, navigating you toward what is best for you.
Right.
You just have to listen.
Yeah. And I know from what I know of your work that you focus a lot on communications, the importance of connection, communication.
Right.
So I'm hoping that the audience is really hearing. We're not talking about narcissism here. We're talking about 180 degrees from narcissism.
Right.
And the truth of the matter is, some people who really want to be in control of your life aren't going to like it. But the people that are either your real friends or the people that really want to be your friends, they end up loving it. And
they're getting the best of you now, right? Because you feel full, you don't feel survival stress, you don't feel that kind of adrenaline, everyday PTSD because everything's like pulling at you.
Right.
You're bringing two people in your life. Whoever hangs out and stays with the program with you, right? Whoever says, "Oh, I'm on board with this," or at least says, "I love you so much. I want you to love yourself the best way you know how." That's a great gift. Doing all of that will confuse some people, but I always say you can think of yourself like walking down a path and your hands are down and you're available if somebody wants to take your hand and move into more happiness and more peace and more enjoyment and passion. And if somebody doesn't take your hand right now and they are not loving the way that you're loving yourself, then you can just lovingly say, that invitation will be open whenever they want to support you loving yourself.
Right.
Because that's what a relationship is really about, so.
Yeah, and just by being that way, you're such a model and such a great mirror to really support others being the same way with themselves. And if they're that way and you're that way and you're in integrity with yourselves, then you can be in integrity with each other. I mean, that's a very different relationship than, yeah.
even if somebody doesn't, they have a certain response to the way that you shift in how you relate to yourself and what action that takes.
Mm-hmm.
You can just trust they're on their own learning curve, and you can trust that, you continuing to be consistent will reveal something really, really wonderful. And if they don't join that, or they don't support it, it's because it's pretty radically different, and it can just trigger people's sense of abandonment because they're used to having a version of you.
Right.
But this is so much more important, so that even if some people aren't completely hanging out with you in the same way they used to, meaning they're not at the same frequency of engagement, your relationships will all end up feeling similarly, wonderfully, consistent. The way that you relate to one person over in one area of your life will feel like another, and it won't be boring. It'll feel just nice and stable and consistent, so that you can grow your relationships with people from stability, not from struggle and instability.
Right.
So it's a different model.
Right. Now, within this particular series where we are focusing on passionate life and relationship, say a little bit about how chemistry does not equal pure passion.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So I always talk about how we are all this very unique, unrepeatable, irrepeatable combination of DNA, of genetics. And then there's the way that unique thing that unique being expresses itself as it interacts with an environment with people, of course, and an environment of atmosphere and things that are in, that we're absorbing every day and breathing every day. And so that unique self, has this own very particular chemical process. And everything can be different between your serotonin levels and somebody else's. And there can be so many different things that go into this, that just because you have like a chemistry with somebody, it's, there can be something to do with the pheromones and things like that. But I think chemistry can sometimes feel like, it feels like passion, because even though later it's going to be revealed to be something else, sometimes it feels like that because you're like some part of you that is connecting to somebody else that also needs to do a similar type of growth. And it should be sort of collaborative. But if both people, even though there's chemistry, if both people aren't committed to aspirationally evolving themselves, right? Which doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be difficult. It can be done in an everyday way. Then you won't maintain that same level of enthusiasm and passion, right? If one person is more invested in growing themselves, right? Versus just growing the relationship. I think if you grow yourselves, you grow the relationship. So it can be confusing to people. This can really be confusing, because I think the strongest thing that can create passionate relationships that are sustainably passionate and enthusiastic is that wonderful amusement and exploration of being a person and being a person alongside the other person. And what's that like, and how, the whole exploration of it. And otherwise it'll just be something that has that quality of expectations that you're trying to fulfill from something you didn't have from your childhood, as most people know.
Right.
You'll be trying to get the other person to do it, and that will take passion away also.
Yeah, and it ain't gonna happen, folks.
It's the opposite, trying to make that happen. So it can be really confusing.
Totally. So you touched on it in what you were just saying, but there's a meme out there that relationships are tough and they've got to be tough. And can they really be effortless?
This is absolutely possible, folks. I really feel that what we tell ourselves, is what's true for us. And I know people are really understanding that concept more now. I feel that when your relationship with yourself is your primary methodology of how you relate to others, because it's coming through you, it's not going around you to try to accomplish something or get something to feel a certain way. When everything is coming through you, that has that more effortless quality. Because, you know, if I'm connected to myself and know myself, when I'm talking to my husband, I don't need to say things about trying to get him to be a certain way or something like that. What connects us more is I can share things like, you know, honey, I noticed that I'm really interested in more of this, but I also noticed that I'm not doing this or this, and I'm really committed to bringing more of this forth so we can have more of this. And it's a way of communicating with somebody that doesn't trigger their defenses, because you're owning your desires, what you notice about what you could be bringing forth and what you're really aspiring to. And then somebody gets to learn about you, and then it prompts people, it'll prompt your partner or people in your life to say, well, I really notice with myself that I'd really like more of this, or I'm not enjoying this, but I recognize I'm not doing this, or I could be doing more of this. When you're speaking about what you notice about yourself, that then creates a new kind of dialogue that has people speaking about themselves in a non-narcissistic way, but in a way that says, here's what I notice, which doesn't also make it absolute reality or fact.
Right.
It just gives a sense of something that keeps all the friction down, and it just has this quality of learning together, and it's safer. And in that way, things can really feel effortless. But the effort does come from you really committing to that place. And if you find yourself a little off track, which even I do at times, I can
Sure.
you know, default to an old way of trying to get him to, you know, and all of a sudden something will come out of my mouth, and then I can just correct it and say, you know, actually, here's what I notice. I would really appreciate it if you help me close the windows on a regular basis. I mean, it could be anything.
Right. Yeah.
Because everybody, what integrity and the method really does is, I really want everybody to think about just putting it into your regular day-to-day, your actionable stuff on a daily basis, because integrity comes from how you action integrity, how you make the choices and put it into action, and then it's so. But you don't have to think of it as some big process that you have to do separately. It's just in your actual moments of your life and whatever that contains.
Yeah.
And that can be so much more effortless, you know, because it's right there in front of you. Like, how do I conduct myself in this moment? You know, thinking about a household duty or some part of your job, or how you make any decision on a daily basis, what text message to answer, or, you know, what to focus on.
Yeah. And in this process, I mean, it's there's an awakening. I know, to the extent that I look at things that way, definitely there's that realization that, my gosh, not being myself takes a lot more effort. You know,
it hurts.
the freedom and flow that comes when you're in alignment is exactly that. It's freedom and flow. Otherwise, it's all these defensive things and structures that we're trying to weave ourselves around, and we miss that, and that definitely interrupts passion, because passion is a journey of curiosity and enthusiasm. And
well, Alan, you make such a great point, because that's what really that revolutionary moment for myself, where I just said, this shouldn't be this much work, because I can't believe somebody would have made us suffer so much in something like this. And it just feels like it's not supposed to be that much work. And being myself is so much more fun and interesting, that, you know, some moments you say, oh, wow, that just came out of my mouth. How interesting is that I just came up with I just had an interesting thought that I find interesting, which is I can enjoy.
Uh-huh.
And it really is this beautiful unfolding, rather than you're trying to operate off of a million rule books about how to be a person, instead of the one that's built within you that will never steer you wrong. It knows what you need, how much rest, how much connection with friends, how much laughter, how much wheatgrass, it knows what you want. It really does. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you just have to ask honestly, and there you go. Right?
And trust that self,
Yeah,
because that's the beautiful process is
yeah,
we're trying to figure out what can we really count on and what mechanism, and what could be more enjoyable than trusting your own self and being the complete world expert on yourself, so that in your relationships, you're not just there with people, which we've all experienced, being in families. And I have always said, I knew my parents, I knew they loved me, but that's not the same as the feeling that I would have felt if they were connected to themselves and they felt in a flow. I would have picked up on knowing them more of how to be a person from that place. So it's one thing to know we love each other, and it's another thing to be so connected to yourself that somebody gets to feel that, and then they get to really feel love from you because they're getting the fullness of you. And that's what everybody's really yearning for. And they're trying to replace it with other things that can just never substitute somebody really being available to themselves and therefore available to you.
yeah. What a wonderful, wonderful point. And with that point, I'm also very aware of the time. And it's flown by. I had a hunch it would, and it has. And we could go on, and I hope we do someday. In fact, I'm looking forward to when your book does come out. Please let me know the title and everything, and when that's out. I want to share that with my audience also, because I really appreciate what you've offered today, and I really appreciate what you're offering out there for the whole planet. And speaking of offerings, you mentioned that you have a free gift. Would you tell our viewing audience about that?
So everyone, just so you know, and Alan asked about my book. So the book is, first of all, called The Method, and the subtitle is The Practical Path to Living Your Purpose and Potential, because we got to make things practical, right? On a day-to-day basis. And a way to get started is this free gift that I'm giving everybody, about how to really initially connect to your own self and your own navigation system. And so you'll be receiving a link to an audio download that's about 30 minutes, and it'll just walk you through that initial connection to begin to have a relationship with yourself. Because as Alan said, how do we love ourselves? There's actual practical ways that we're talking about today, and that in this exercise, you're going to get to learn how to do that, and you're going to enjoy it. And again, I promise you, it's going to be fun.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. What a great, generous gift, and what a useful gift. I am looking forward to clicking onto that myself. And I appreciate your offering that. And for our viewing audience, you'll see a link right after this interview, and maybe coming on there now where you can see it. You just click on that link. You'll put in your first name and your email address and click onto that link, and it will give you access to the wonderful gift that Dr. T has just offered.
Yeah.
And again, we're going to have to bring this to a close. Thanks again so much. I appreciated your contribution, and thank you for being with us today, Dr. T.
Alan, thank you for doing what you're doing to serve people so wonderfully with all of this and this opportunity. This is it's just exceptional, and I'm thrilled everybody's getting what you have to offer. So it's wonderful. I love spending time with you today. Thank you so much.
Great. Me too. Thank you. And to our audience, thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll look forward to our connection into the future. And I'm Alan Darbonne, and I'll be your host for this whole series. And I just want to remind you all, and it's very in keeping with Dr. T has been talking about, is that the planet really needs your particular love and your particular light. We can't actually be whole without you. You are the missing piece. So please just bring your kindness and speak your truth. That will serve all of us. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.